How can a single handshake end up triggering a massive geopolitical shockwave? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down. This is a story about a very rare diplomatic moment, a furious ultimatum that followed, and what just might be the first signs of a new global order taking shape right before our very eyes. And believe it or not, it all starts with one simple gesture. You know, it sounds so simple, almost trivial, doesn't it? A handshake. But this one gesture between the leaders of the world's two most populous nations set off a chain reaction that has Washington and Brussels completely scrambling. All right, so first things first, let's set the scene. The catalyst for all of this was a meeting that, honestly, was years and years in the making. Indian Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping actually met on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Now, to really get the weight of this, you have to think about that time frame. 7 years. In the world of geopolitics, that is an absolute eternity. So this handshake, it was a major event on the world stage. And look, this wasn't just some quick handshake for the cameras. It had real, tangible results. I mean, beyond just agreements on border stability and resuming direct flights, PM Modi actually invited President Xi to the 2026 BRICS Summit in India. When you put all these pieces together, these weren't just diplomatic niceties. They were a clear signal of a real intention to rebuild their relationship and keep the dialogue going. So the message being sent here? No, it was unmistakable. By showing this renewed cooperation, India and China sent a really powerful signal to the West, and you can bet, particularly to America. And that message was that they are more than willing and able to pursue their own interests, their own security, without being totally dependent on Western powers. Of course, a meeting like this doesn't just happen in a bubble. The West, and especially the United States, was watching every move. And according to reports, they were furious. This sudden friendliness was not something they were prepared for at all, and it led to what a lot of people are now calling a last-ditch, kind of desperate move. So what was the American response? Well, it really boils down to this one number, 50%. The White House, having already put some tariffs on India, decided to escalate things dramatically. They started pressuring their allies to impose this brand new, really punitive tariff. The demand that they took to the European Union was stark, to say the least. First, you need to do what we're doing and hit India with these massive tariffs. And second, you have to completely stop all energy trade with New Delhi. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a straight-up ultimatum. Okay, so that brings up a really good question. Why desperate? I mean, it sounds pretty tough, right? Why is this strategy seen not as a show of strength, but maybe as a sign that America is running out of cards to play? Well, it's seen that way for a couple of key reasons. For one, India just isn't buckling under the pressure that's already there. It's just finding other places to send its exports to get around the tariffs. But maybe even more critically, India and the EU have been speeding up their own trade talks, and that growing closeness is something this ultimatum was very clearly designed to blow up. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. This brings us to the next, and I think maybe the most telling part of this whole affair, Europe's reaction to America's ultimatum. So what was the response? Silence. Total silence. In the face of these direct, very loud demands from its top ally, Europe has, so far, chosen to do nothing. The call was ignored. And let me tell you, in diplomacy, that kind of silence is absolutely deafening. And you know, maybe we shouldn't be all that surprised by this silent treatment. It didn't come out of nowhere. Just weeks before this, a senior NATO official reportedly warned the U.S. that its hardline policy on India was, and I'm quoting here, not wrong, but very wrong, and that it was actively damaging America's image. So the cracks in that Western consensus were already starting to show. So let's zoom out. What does all of this add up to? You've got a handshake, a huge ultimatum, and then a silent refusal. Many analysts are now starting to believe that we're seeing the first real tremors of a major shift in the global balance of power. The big word here is hegemony. It's basically that dominant power, that top dog status the U.S. has held for decades. The fear in Washington is that if countries like India and China start aligning, and its own allies like the EU start charting their own course, that dominance could just evaporate. And that's the bottom line, isn't it? When a superpower issues a demand and its closest allies don't fall in line, its power to negotiate, its global leverage, it gets seriously diminished. All of a sudden, the limits of its influence are on display for the whole world to see.
So when you put all the pieces together, the signs all seem to point in the same direction. You've got the India-China thaw, you've got Europe's new independent streak, there's even speculation about new trilateral meetings. Every single one of these is a step away from a world with one clear leader and towards a multipolar one, where power is spread out a lot more.
Which leaves us with this final and I think really critical question. This one chain of events has exposed a massive potential shift in how the world works. So when the world's leading power makes a call for solidarity and the phone just keeps on ringing, what happens next? That's something the entire world is now waiting to find out.